This is Mr. Eugene, and today we're examining something nobody warns you about, a psychological reality that destroys relationships between good men and extremely beautiful women before those men even understand what went wrong. There's something nobody tells you about extremely beautiful women. The more beautiful she is, the less stable her sense of self usually becomes. And it's not because she's weak or flawed or damaged as a person. It's because her brain was trained differently from everyone else from the moment she became attractive. When a woman grows up being constantly noticed, constantly desired, constantly validated for her appearance, her nervous system adapts to that reality. She doesn't experience attention as something special or flattering or unusual. She experiences it as normal, as baseline, as the air she breathes. From a young age, often starting in adolescence when physical beauty first emerges, people treat her differently. They forgive her faster. They help her more eagerly. They tolerate behaviors they would never accept from others. They offer opportunities without her asking. They pursue her relentlessly. They accommodate her preferences automatically. They make her world easier in 1,000 subtle ways because they want something from her or want to be near her. And without consciously realizing it, her brain learns a dangerous, destabilizing lesson. Her value comes from being wanted. Not from who she is internally, her character, her competence, her contributions, but from how others react to her externally, their desire, their attention, their pursuit. Today we're examining the external identity trap that beautiful women fall into, the dopamine dependency that makes normal relationships feel inadequate, why social media has made this problem infinitely worse, the emotional instability that emerges when attention drops, the fragility that exists beneath surface-level beauty, why most men catastrophically misunderstand what they're dealing with, and most critically, how to recognize whether a beautiful woman has built internal foundation or whether she's psychologically dependent on external validation. This is not about hating beautiful women or claiming all beautiful women are unstable. This is about understanding a specific psychological pattern that emerges from specific environmental conditions, so you can make informed decisions rather than being blindsided by instability you never saw coming. Stay with me. This might save you from the most beautiful disaster of your life, the external identity trap, when your value becomes what others see. Let me start by explaining the psychological mechanism that creates this instability, because understanding the mechanics is essential to recognizing the pattern. How identity forms in normal development and healthy psychological development. Identity forms through internal exploration, discovering what you like, what you're good at, what matters to you independent of others' opinions. Competence building, developing skills, achieving goals, solving problems, creating value through your own efforts. Character development, making difficult choices, maintaining integrity under pressure, building principles you live by regardless of external validation. Relationship depth, forming connections based on mutual understanding, shared values, genuine compatibility rather than surface attraction. This creates internal identity, a sense of self that exists independent of how others perceive you. You know who you are whether people are watching or not. Your worth is rooted in what you've built, not in how you're perceived. How identity deforms under constant external validation for extremely beautiful women, identity formation follows a different path. From early adolescence, sometimes even childhood if she's unusually pretty, her beauty generates constant reactions. Teachers favor her. Peers compete for her attention. Adults treat her special. Boys pursue her relentlessly. Strangers smile at her. People forgive her transgressions. Opportunities appear without effort. The world reorganizes itself around her appearance. Her brain registers this pattern. When I look this way, people give me things. When people see me, I get attention, kindness, help, opportunities, affection, validation. This creates a cognitive shortcut, my value equal to how people react to me. Over time, this becomes her primary frame for understanding self-worth. She doesn't develop robust internal identity because she never needed to. External validation provided everything she needed to feel valuable. The dangerous lesson without conscious awareness, she learns, I am valuable when I am desired, not I am valuable because of my character or because of my competence or because of my contributions. I am valuable when others want me. This creates existential dependency on external validation. Her sense of self doesn't exist independently. It only exists in reflection of others' reactions to her. Like a plant that grew in artificial light and never developed the ability to photosynthesize from the sun, she developed in an environment of abundant external validation and never developed the ability to generate internal worth. The dopamine dependency, why attention becomes addictive. Now let's examine the neurological mechanism that makes this pattern self-reinforcing and increasingly destabilizing. How dopamine reinforcement works: every time someone desires her, pursues her, validates her appearance, chooses her, her brain releases dopamine. Not a little. A significant surge. Dopamine is the neurochemical that reinforces behavior. It teaches the brain, this is important for survival, this is valuable, seek more of this. The brain doesn't distinguish between healthy sources of dopamine, achievement, genuine connection, meaningful work, and shallow sources, attention, validation being desired. It just registers. This activity produces dopamine, therefore this activity is important. Over years, from adolescence through her 22nd, her brain becomes conditioned, attention equal to dopamine, equal to feeling valuable, equal to safety. This becomes her baseline. Not occasional validation, not periodic attention. Constant, abundant, intense validation becomes what her nervous system expects as normal. The tolerance problem, like any drug, tolerance develops. The same level of attention that once felt satisfying starts feeling inadequate. At 16, one boy pursuing her felt significant. By 22, 5 men pursuing her simultaneously feels normal. By 28, even abundant attention from high-quality men doesn't generate the same dopamine response it once did because her brain has adapted to higher stimulation levels. This creates escalating needs. She requires more intense, more frequent, more novel validation to achieve the same internal sense of being valued. A normal relationship, where one quality man provides consistent attention and validation, can't compete with the dopamine levels her brain was trained to expect from constant pursuit by multiple men. The withdrawal effect when attention drops, and it always does in committed relationships or as she ages, her nervous system doesn't interpret this as normal fluctuation. It interprets it as loss, as danger, as threat. Her brain, attention is dropping, dopamine is decreasing. This signals I'm losing value. This is a survival threat. I need to restore the validation I'm losing. This triggers anxiety, insecurity, need for reassurance, emotional instability, not because something is actually wrong, but because her nervous system was trained to interpret decreased external validation as existential threat. The social media amplification, how technology made this infinitely worse, everything I've described existed before social media. But social media took a manageable problem and turned it into a psychological crisis. Pre-social media beauty validation before Instagram, even extremely beautiful women had limits on validation. They got attention when physically present, at school, at parties, in public. But there were hours or days of normal life where validation wasn't constant. This created natural rhythms that prevented complete dependency. Post-social media validation explosion, now attention never stops. It's constant, instant, unlimited. One photo generates hundreds or thousands of likes within minutes, dozens of comments validating her appearance, DMs from men pursuing her, shares that extend validation to new audiences, followers who provide perpetual attention. Her brain adapts to this level of stimulation. Not the attention of one quality man, not the validation of a few close friends. Hundreds or thousands of people validating her existence with a single photo. The comparison to normal reality. After her brain adapts to social media validation levels, normal attention feels quiet. One man telling her she's beautiful doesn't generate the same dopamine hit as 500 likes. Normal relationships feel flat. The consistent, stable attention from a committed partner can't compete with the variable ratio reinforcement, unpredictable timing and intensity of social media validation. Normal stability feels like absence. When she's in a relationship where she gets steady, predictable validation from one man, her brain interprets the absence of constant, novel validation as deprivation. Not because something is wrong with the relationship, but because her nervous system was trained in excess and cannot recognize healthy, only as insufficient. The impossible competition men are competing against a dopamine delivery system that provides instant gratification. Likes appear within seconds, massive volume, hundreds of validation sources, variable ratio reinforcement, unpredictable. Spikes create addiction, zero effort required. She just posts a photo, constant novelty, new people discovering and validating her. How can one man's attention compete with that? It can't. Unless she's done the psychological work to recognize the difference between validation addiction and genuine connection, which most haven't. The emotional instability, what this pattern creates. Now let's examine the specific forms of emotional instability that emerge from this psychology. Overthinking small changes because her sense of self is externally referenced. Small changes in how you treat her feel catastrophic. You used to text good morning every day. Now you text good morning most days. Her brain, he's losing interest. My value is decreasing. The relationship is ending. You used to compliment her appearance multiple times daily. Now you compliment her once daily. Her brain, he doesn't find me as attractive anymore. I'm losing him. I need to restore the validation. These aren't rational assessments. They're nervous system responses trained by years of equating external validation with survival. Insecurity without clear reason. She'll feel insecure even when objectively everything is fine. You're faithful, attentive, committed, consistent. The relationship is healthy and stable. But she still feels anxious, questioning, uncertain. Why? Because her internal sense of security was never developed. She only knows how to feel secure through constant external validation. When that validation becomes predictable and stable, as it should in healthy relationships, Her brain doesn't register it as security, it registers it as absence of the dopamine spikes she's addicted to. Constant need for reassurance, she asks repeatedly. Do you still find me attractive? Do you still want me? Are you sure you're happy? You seem distant. Is something wrong? Do you still love me? Not once, constantly, every few days. Sometimes multiple times daily, because she genuinely cannot hold on to reassurance. Her brain doesn't have the ability to internalize. Yes, I love you, I'm committed, and feel secure in that. She needs the dopamine hit of hearing it again and again because the neurochemical response is what temporarily soothes her anxiety. Testing and drama creation, some extremely beautiful women unconsciously create conflict or test boundaries because conflict generates intensity, and intensity generates dopamine. Even negative attention can feel better than stable peace if her brain is addicted to high stimulation. Testing proves she's desired. If you chase after conflict, if you fight to keep her, if you pursue when she withdraws, that proves you still want her, which provides the validation her brain craves. Drama feels more real than stability because her brain was never trained that stable peace equals security. Her brain learned that intense pursuit equals being valued. The fragility beneath beauty, why appearance doesn't equal strength. This is where most men make their catastrophic error in assessment. The assumption men see extreme beauty and unconsciously assume she must be confident, everyone wants her. She must be emotionally strong, she's been chosen her whole life. She must be psychologically stable, she's never experienced rejection or struggle. She must be low maintenance, she has everything she needs. Every assumption is wrong. The reality beneath surface extreme beauty often correlates with extreme psychological fragility because her identity was built on reactions, not foundations. When reactions change, and they always do, aging, relationship commitment, life circumstances, her entire sense of self crumbles because nothing internal was built to support it. She never developed resilience through struggle. Most people build psychological strength through facing and overcoming difficulty. She never had to face much difficulty because her beauty smoothed most obstacles, so she never developed the capacity to handle adversity. She never built competence-based self-worth. Most people derive confidence from, I can do difficult things, I've overcome challenges, I've built something through effort. She derived worth from, people desire me, which requires no effort and teaches no competence. She's terrified of losing what she never built. Internal worth that you built yourself can't be taken away. External worth based on appearance will inevitably fade. She lives in constant low-level terror of the inevitable loss of the only source of value she knows. Some of the most beautiful are the most fragile. This is the paradox men don't anticipate. The woman with the perfect face and body may be the one who cries over small perceived slights, needs constant reassurance about your commitment, cannot handle any decrease in attention, becomes emotionally unstable when life gets difficult, lacks the resilience to weather relationship challenges, falls apart when aging begins and validation decreases not because she's a bad person, but because her psychological foundation was built on sand, on temporary external validation rather than permanent internal development. The real test, who are they without validation? Here's the ultimate assessment of psychological health. For beautiful women and everyone else, the questions that reveal truth: who is she when nobody is watching? Does she have interests, pursuits, values independent of how they're perceived? Or does everything exist for performance and validation? Who is she when nobody is choosing her? Can she be content alone, or does she need constant pursuit and attention to feel valuable? Who is she when validation drops? Does she maintain equilibrium, or does she fall apart emotionally? Who is she when appearance fades or changes? Can she adapt and find new sources of worth? Or does she cling desperately to the validation source that's disappearing? These questions reveal whether she's built internal foundation or whether she's psychologically dependent on external circumstances. The version that exists long-term, the version fueled by attention and validation, is temporary. It exists while she's young, while she's at peak beauty, while she's single and generating pursuit, while social media provides endless validation. But that version cannot sustain long-term because beauty fades with age. Committed relationships don't provide constant novel pursuit. Life includes challenges that can't be solved by being attractive. Internal emptiness eventually overwhelms external validation. The version that exists long-term is who she is without validation. That's the person you'll be living with in 10, 20, 30 years. That's who you need to evaluate, not the validation-fueled performance version. The critical mistake men make, confusing beauty with strength. Let me address the specific error that destroys men who date extremely beautiful women. The confusion: men assume beauty reflects psychological strength. That someone who looks that good, who's been chosen that often, who has that much social power, must be confident, emotionally stable, psychologically resilient. This is categorically wrong. Beauty reflects genetics, and that's it. The symmetry of features, the distribution of fat, the bone structure, the skin quality, all genetic lottery. Beauty does not reflect emotional stability, psychological resilience, internal security. character strength, relationship capability, ability to handle adversity, depth of self-awareness. Confusing genetic advantage with psychological strength is like assuming someone born wealthy must be financially competent. The inheritance tells you nothing about their capability. The consequences of this mistake: when men enter relationships with extremely beautiful women assuming psychological strength, they're blindsided by the fragility. They didn't expect the constant need for reassurance, the emotional instability, the inability to handle decreased attention. They blame themselves for her insecurity. I must not be validating her enough. I must not be showing love enough. They don't realize her insecurity is structural, not about his inadequacy, but about her dependency on external validation. They exhaust themselves trying to fill an unfillable void. No amount of attention, validation, or reassurance is enough because the need is neurological addiction, not rational need. They stay too long trying to fix what they didn't break. They believe if they just love her enough, validate her enough, prove themselves enough, she'll stabilize. But you can't fix external dependency through external validation. That just reinforces the dependency, the shift in perception, choosing stability over intensity. This is the moment where mature men's perception fundamentally changes. You stop being hypnotized by appearance. Extreme beauty no longer overwhelms your judgment. You can appreciate it aesthetically, while recognizing it tells you nothing about whether this person is psychologically healthy, emotionally stable, or capable of partnership. You see beauty as one variable among many, not the dominant variable that overrides all other considerations. You stop confusing beauty with strength. You recognize that the most beautiful woman in the room might also be the most psychologically fragile. And fragility, regardless of how attractive the package, creates relationship instability you don't want in your life. You start evaluating: does she have internal foundation? Can she be stable without constant validation? Has she built identity beyond appearance? You stop choosing based on impulse. Impulse says, she's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I have to pursue her. I'd be lucky to have her. Assessment says she's beautiful, but is she psychologically stable? Does she have internal security? Can she handle the normal fluctuations of committed relationship? Or will dating her be constant emotional management of validation addiction? You start choosing based on stability, on whether this person can actually be a functional long-term partner, rather than on the dopamine hit of being with someone extremely attractive. The fundamental recognition: attraction is biological. Your nervous system responds to beauty automatically. That response is hardwired. But compatibility is psychological, and psychological compatibility requires emotional stability, internal security, healthy identity formation, ability to self-soothe, resilience under stress, capacity for genuine intimacy. Beauty guarantees attraction, but it guarantees nothing about compatibility. The man who understands this stops chasing intensity and starts recognizing reality. How to identify: does she have foundation or dependency? So how do you actually assess whether a beautiful woman has built internal foundation or is dependent on external validation? Green flags: internal foundation: she has substantial interests and pursuits independent of how they're perceived. Career: she's passionate about for its own sake, not for status. Hobbies: she engages in privately, not for social media. Values and principles: she maintains when they're unpopular. Goals: she pursues even when no one's watching. She's comfortable with decreased attention, doesn't panic when you're busy and less available, can go periods without posting on social media without anxiety, doesn't need constant reassurance about your attraction, handles normal relationship fluctuations with equilibrium. She has depth beyond appearance, interesting conversations about substance, not just surface, curiosity about your life, thoughts, experiences, self-awareness about her patterns and challenges, genuine interest in growth and development. She can be alone without falling apart, has solo hobbies and interests, doesn't need constant companionship to feel okay, can be content without pursuit or validation, maintains stability when single. Red flags: validation dependency: everything is performative, posts constantly on social media seeking validation, makes relationship decisions based on how they'll look to others, needs every experience to be photographed and shared, values appearance over substance, consistently cannot handle decreased attention, panics when you're less available than usual, requires constant reassurance, creates drama when validation drops, cannot distinguish between normal fluctuation and relationship problems, has no substantial interest beyond appearance, primary focus is maintaining beauty and attracting attention, no deep hobbies, passions, or pursuits, conversations stay surface level, no evidence of internal development, work falls apart without external validation, emotionally unstable when alone, needs constant pursuit to feel valuable, cannot self-soothe or generate internal security, past relationships show pattern of validation-seeking behavior. Final thoughts: beauty is not foundation. Here's what men need to understand about extremely beautiful women. Beauty is a genetic advantage that creates psychological disadvantage if not carefully managed. The same trait that provides social benefits, constant attention, preferential treatment, abundant options, creates internal vulnerabilities, external dependency, validation addiction, unstable identity. Not all beautiful women fall into this trap. Some recognize the pattern and actively work against it. Some build internal foundation despite external advantages. Some develop psychological strength alongside physical beauty, but many don't. Many beautiful women are psychologically fragile precisely because their beauty prevented them from developing the resilience, competence, and internal security that most people build through struggle. Your job as a man is to recognize beauty for what it is: genetic lottery, aesthetically pleasing, biologically attractive, but not indicative of psychological health, emotional stability, or relationship capability. Assess foundation, not appearance. Does she have internal security or external dependency? Has she built identity beyond being desired? Can she handle normal life without constant validation? Choose compatibility over attraction. The most beautiful woman who's psychologically unstable will make your life miserable. The moderately attractive woman who's internally secure will make your life peaceful. Understand what you're dealing with. If you choose a beautiful woman with validation dependency, you're choosing constant emotional management, endless reassurance, and relationship instability. Enter with eyes open, not hypnotized. Remember the ultimate truth: the real test of a person, beautiful or not, is who they are without validation. Who they are when nobody's watching, who they are when nobody's choosing them. Because that version is who exists long-term, not the version fueled by attention, not the performance, the actual person beneath the validation addiction. Choose wisely, because beauty fades. But psychological patterns persist. Drop a comment about your experience. Have you dated extremely beautiful women and discovered the fragility beneath the surface? What did you learn? Subscribe, because this channel will continue examining uncomfortable truths about relationship dynamics that save men from beautiful disasters. Stay wise, stay discerning, and never confuse genetic lottery with psychological strength.